The long story short is that we're here today to announce that Coronado Park is now closed. It was 3 weeks ago we announced that we'd be closing Coronado Park because a public safety risk had just become too great. We've been providing intensive outreach and notices and service offerings in this park for almost 20 days since that announcement. Every single person in this park was offered services and help several times, and many took us up on that offer. At the end of today, more or less, there were only about 40 people still here, between 30 and 40 people still here. That's way down from when we announced this, from it being around 100. Now, this did take a very, very significant effort from a lot of city departments and nonprofit partners. Heading Home is here with us today, who have showed up time and time again to try and get folks the help that they need. And they'll continue to do that throughout our city. But I want to thank them for all their hard work. I also know that it was just yesterday where we announced APD's arrest of Joseph Garcia for the murder of a man almost right here where I'm standing today. And he was part of a group that was controlling drug trafficking and human trafficking right here in the park, and even the trafficking of space and resources. They were essentially sort of charging rent and had their own sort of ring going on for a number of resources, controlling substances and access to resources right here at the park. Now, we've made it clear that the public safety risk for the people inside the park was no longer acceptable. And so we took action because our city deserved better than the status quo that has been here at Coronado since even before this administration. This dates back roughly 7 years to when this dynamic started happening. As a reminder, it was definitely exacerbated during the pandemic with some of the restrictions and relaxations that we made then. Now, we're going to hear from Carol Pierce today, we're going to hear from APD, and then we'll certainly take your questions. But I do want to share a little bit about the broader issues with respect to homelessness and housing. Now, the actions taken here today by the city of Albuquerque were made necessary by threats to public health and safety and to the environment that were created by the dynamic of folks encamped in this park. But I want to let no one think for an instant that these actions in any way represent any kind of a comprehensive strategy for resolving the problems that we as a community call homelessness and housing or unsheltered in Albuquerque. Or for that matter, the same issues that are occurring all around our state and all around America. To do something about that broader issue, we as a society have to do several things. First and foremost, we must provide the ingredients of a restart for people. People who have lost their housing due to economic circumstances, people who are mentally ill and who are not receiving and accepting treatment, people who are facing substance abuse issues and who are addicted and also not receiving or accepting treatment. Some people in our streets fall into more than one of those categories. This is complicated for every single individual, and every single individual has their own story or their own issue to tell. But we also know there are some people who believe that they would prefer life on the streets rather than take the services available to them. And that essentially describes the remaining 30 people here who are here today. So what I'm saying is that for us as a society, we've got to provide the ingredients for a restart at the end of the day. But the ingredients of a restart are not a guaranteed lifelong security. Rather, they're a chance to begin to rebuild a full, independent, and productive life. And for us to have enough restart housing, enough restart treatment for mental illness, for addiction, it's going to take so much more than the city of Albuquerque, or than one or two nonprofits, or than one church providing services. It means that every level of government, city, state, and federal, all in conjunction with private resources available, they have to bring everything to bear, a full effort to coordinated problem solving on this issue. And every community in America has to do this, including right here in Albuquerque. We have to actually come up with solutions, not just talk about the fact that we need a plan. What's in the plan? That burden is on all of us. I know that burden is on me as your mayor. I know that. But it's also on everyone else in this community, especially our county and state and federal partners, and any organization that works with the homeless. So as we do this as a city and as a society, we have to also insist that our public spaces can be used for the common purpose with which they were built. It also means that they cannot be misused, because some people will not take advantage of the services that are being provided to them, or that are the services that actually could provide them help. We all have to take advantage of a restart, and we've all got to be part of the solution to providing that restart. And that means the homeless themselves, that means every provider involved, that means everyone complaining about this on social media. We've all got a role to play, and it is not to just complain about the problem. So before we take questions, we do want to hear from Carol Pierce and her outreach teams about what they've been up to, and a brief update from APD. So I'm going to hand it over to Carol. Carol?
Thank you, Mayor. I just really want our community to know that we've done this together, and it's very emotional. Nobody could have done this alone. It took the city, it took our partners, it took heading home and multiple phone calls to respond, which they did, to really get people connected to resources. And we are so proud as a community that as of today, 50 people are now connected to that next step. And why? Because people reached out, because people talked to them, people came out to the park and said, what do you need? And sometimes we had to do that multiple times. It sometimes takes multiple touches of getting a relationship going, and no, we are here to help. What do you need? And I can't overemphasize what the mayor is saying. Do we need more? You bet we do. But we know Albuquerque can do this together. We're proud that those 50 people are in that next step. Today alone, 15 people with Heading Home's vans, getting over to the Albuquerque Opportunity Center, got to be to that next step. 5 people with vouchers because they were on the next step. We saw a gentleman today that 2 weeks ago, he'd been shot in the foot. Our providers out here said, sir, that does not look good. We have got to get you help. We saw him today, he'd had surgery, looking much, much better, and now he's one of the people in our intensive outreach to get on the path on those next steps. One of our gentlemen also getting to go to Albuquerque Opportunity Center, and we told him, we said, this is the bomb. You want to go there and get the help. During waiting for the van to come to get him, he got the phone call that the job that he'd been waiting for as a carpenter came through. And he found out how much he was going to be making per hour, and we all celebrated with him. And he can tell his story about his loved one fell to the harm of addiction. You know, we'll be having a fentanyl summit here pretty soon as a community where we need to talk about the really hard issues. He was on the next step, the better path, and I'm proud to say that together with our partners, we're going to make sure he's set up with the tools he needs to start his new carpentry job. So there's story after story of success. There's also story of heartache and being out here and this change of a park, but together as a community we're doing it, and couldn't speak more proudly of our partners and the community that have rallied together to really do the intensive outreach that's been possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Just want to mention that this concept of safety, we want everyone in the city to be safe. That includes folks who are unfortunately unsheltered, but it also includes the service providers and who are trying to help them. And part of the problem with Coronado Park is it became so unsafe that all of the folks Carol just described were not safe to come in here and actually offer those services. And so that is a good example. People will say, well, why didn't those 15 people get those services before? The reason why is because lives were threatened when our service providers went in here to offer those services. So that's another example where the scale of this had just gotten out of hand and was unacceptable. And to reflect on that, a little bit about what APD has had to deal with in this area, our lieutenant and acting commander of this area, Commander Wheeler.
Hello, everyone. So, first off, I'd like to thank everyone that's been involved in this process, especially FCS, ACS, Hope Works, the AOC, for doing the intensive outreach. I've come out here every day to speak to some of the unhoused folks and have learned that they knew about services, but they were afraid to get services. When I asked about what they were afraid of, they explained to me that they were afraid of the self-proclaimed mayor, who was thankfully arrested 2 days ago by our investigative services division for murder. A murder that occurred here of a man named Andrew Aguilar over a dispute where Andrew did not want to pay rent to live in this park. So with that arrest, it made people feel more comfortable, felt more safe. And today when I came this morning for the cleaning, I spoke to two of the individuals that have refused to get treatment, to be taken to the shelter because of threats of retaliation or violence from the individual that they called the mayor of Coronado Park. Well, now that they were gone, they got onto a bus today and have received the treatment that they wanted and so very much need. You know, the safety of our citizens and everyone that stays or comes through Albuquerque is our top priority with the police department. The most vulnerable folks, the unhoused that were living in Coronado Park, you know, every day they were victimized. There was drug trafficking here, sex trafficking, aggravated assaults, batteries, and, you know, extortion with the mayor and his group, and murder. Over the past 5 years, we've had multiple murders. Just over the past couple years, we've had 5 here. We've had 16 stabbings, and we've had 1,802 calls for service for the police department just at the park and the surrounding area. And that's 2nd Street here to 6th Street and from Aspen to Cutler. The majority of those contacts that we've had related to calls for service stemmed from something that occurred here at the park. You know, over the past few months, since January 1st, our aggravated assaults and batteries have increased in the park by 30% from this time last year. My guys continue to come out here and speak with everybody, trying to get the information on those offenders and those preying on our people in the park. But again, everyone was afraid. This morning, my bike guys came through here and were able to get some information on offenders that have been committing crimes. And because they were so worried about being retaliated against or harmed, they wouldn't provide any information until today. So they're going to be working on doing some warrants for individuals that were causing some issues in the park, to include aggravated assaults and aggravated batteries. Some of those instances were supposedly recorded, so we're going to be working on that with our impact detectives. Again, this has been a department-wide effort and a city-wide effort. Over the past couple months, our narcotics division has been targeting those that are supplying the most vulnerable in our community with narcotics, knowing that they have a problem and they guarantee they're going to sell some narcotics to these folks or trade stolen property, sex acts, money, other types of drugs for these narcotics that they're ingesting. So the narcotics unit have set up multiple operations in the area. And again, some of these numbers I've already provided, but they did secure and seize with our federal partners over 4,500 fentanyl pills, 5,000 pounds of meth, 24 grams of heroin, 29 grams of cocaine. They've made multiple felony arrests on new charges and warrants for people that have absconded from probation and parole. And I mean, just knowing that the safety of everybody is in mind, I'm proud to say that I'm glad the park is closing, because now we can move on and help the individuals that want the help. Now they're less likely to be preyed upon, because they're not in one centralized area where someone can come in and claim it's their stake and claim it's their town and make rules for these people. Now the ACS and FCS individual workers that go out can feel safe, because they're not going to be surrounded by people that are intense, that don't want help or are afraid or want to harm one of them. So it should make everyone feel a lot safer. The officers in the Valley Area Command are going to increase patrols in the area. Like I said, 2nd through 6th, Aspen to to the freeway, underpasses, state police will be helping us. If a business or residence has an issue with trespassing, someone that's on their property and they're not allowed to be, or they want them removed, call 242 COPS, or you can use our APD app. If it's a life or death emergency, call 911. You can also use the 311 app to reach out to APD or ACS if it's unhoused individuals that need some resources. Again, my folks are going to be going out to these calls for service and taking enforcement action. Whether that's a warning, a citation, or an arrest, we're going to be identifying these individuals that are committing crimes and documenting it in our CAD system so we can keep track. If this person continues to come back where they're not wanted and they've been given a lawful order to remove themselves, then we'll move on to a citation, and then we'll move on to an arrest. You know, it's not illegal to be homeless, but it is illegal to break the law, and my guys are going to hold everybody accountable. So again, safety is our priority for the department and the city. And if you have any questions after the end, you can get with me. Thank you.
Okay, a couple of things before we go to questions. Number one, we want to remind folks that there are still beds available. So literally, if there's someone else who's looking for shelter, we have beds available at a couple of different facilities. Also want to let folks know that we try to do everything we can with respect to areas, safe, secure storage places for individuals' property. And so the city had several options, and a lot of people took us up on it, on where to safely store some of their property. So we certainly were sensitive to that too. Now, in terms of what's next, in the very short term, no matter what happens, there are lots of repairs that need to be done here. You are going to see, unfortunately, these beautiful old trees. Many of them do have to be cut down because, as you can see, they're completely dead. And we'll save what we can, but you're going to see city crews out here. We also know that, you know, some people might try and come back, this and that, but we're going to regularly patrol this, and it is officially closed, which means that people are not going to be allowed to stay for very long. And that's not going to change. I mean, when it's closed until we open it. So the last thing is the long-term plan. Basically, we've identified 3 long-term options. One is obviously to make this a park again, but we are proceeding with a brand new, bigger park a couple of blocks that way at the Walker property. So we believe that this community is going to get a beautiful, awesome new park that we will keep safe. And so that's why we're going to emphasize that's where a park should be, in the heart of a neighborhood, not next to a highway. So for this area, we're more looking at public safety uses. That fire station has long been needed expansion and training area, as well as housing. So on the front burner, which we do have funding for, is to frankly build some supportive housing here. And so we'll look at all the options. Nothing is finalized, but we certainly have some front runners around public safety and housing. And again, it's in conjunction with I think it's over a $10 million investment, or right around there, in the Walker property. I'd have to get the exact example, which is going to be right next to the community center. So that is a better place for a park anyway. And so, and that is going to happen. That's not in planning. That is going to happen by the end of the year. At a minimum, we're going to start working on that. And so we feel very good about the green space options in this community. All right, so with that, I think we'll take some questions from folks, and we'll just see. I can start out directing, and we'll see how long it goes. Sure.
How does the city intend on keeping people out? There is fencing, people can still jump over. How does the city intend to keep this park closed?
Yeah, great question. So, and I think what we'll do, why don't we have Dan, I think Dan is right here. Why don't you coordinate, because a lot of these I'm not the best person to answer for. So with that one, Dave Simon, all right, come on up, and then Dan, you can kind of moderate from there. Yeah.
Hello everyone, Dave Simon, your Parks and Recreation Director. So the first thing is the fence behind us is going to be strengthened tomorrow, and it'll be a firm, secure fence on this east side of the park. Obviously, with the support of the city's departments, principally APD and our Metro Security Division, we're going to have intensive patrols and monitoring and law enforcement in this park. And now that it's cleared and empty, it will be much, much easier to maintain the park free of encampments as it remains closed.
Matt, I think.
How long, or what will the city have a long, when do they plan to have a long-term plan for the park going forward? What are they, is there a date or expect to have an idea of what this will look like?
So one of the things that is very beneficial about what we're doing now is we're at least dealing with the public safety situation physically right here. That gives us time to plan what's next. And
if they draft this kid, which I promise you they will do.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this is a
And so the timing is going to be based on a fundraising effort essentially by us to figure out what we can finance in this area. And that will probably extend, it's going to start tomorrow, but it's going to extend perhaps all the way through the legislative session because we might have funding asks at the state legislature. So I would say, what is that, roughly 6 months. Hopefully we should have an answer after the session.
Gabriel.
So the third one that the mayor spoke about is we have, during Mayor Keller's administration, we have put significant amount of dollars into our housing program. One option is to look at potentially building a mixed-use development here with affordable housing and some other amenities, retail, etc., so that we can find means for housing for these individuals and for others who need it across the city. So it would be a redevelopment of this park.
Julie.
Mayor, I think this is for you maybe, but can you just elaborate again on why today in particular you felt, okay, let's do it, let's get it done before, I know you had an end of August deadline, but why today in particular you feel it's best?
Yeah, the approach we used was really one of, we wanted to essentially provide notice to everyone, and that's why it was about 20 days ago where we just said, we're going to be closing it this month. But the exact date was really just determined by readiness in terms of everyone who's involved in this. So we did our best to connect with as many folks as we could, most importantly who lived here. So they got multiple touches. We made sure that we had over 3 weeks of literally daily outreach. So plenty of notice for sure for them and options. That was number one, is we wanted to make sure and just make that abundantly clear. The second thing was making sure that our crews and so forth were ready, whether it's the parks team for when they're ready to deal with the trees in the irrigation, because we know we needed to deal with that eminently because of the fact these trees could fall over. So it was getting their crews ready. And it was also making sure this case with APD did have a little bit to do with it. We wanted to make sure we had our ducks in a row for the evidence that we needed to arrest the individual yesterday. And so that was another key piece. And so when you kind of roll all those up together, we were also cleaning the park more frequently. So rather than actually just ripping the Band-Aid off, we used a little bit of a hybrid approach. We said we're going to kind of slowly peel it off, and then when we're ready, we'll rip the rest off. And so we were ready today, but we had plenty of outreach. But we also knew at some point, you just have to say it's closed. And that point is today.
So for the other folks who chose not to get services, said we don't want them right now, is there expectation that they'll dissipate into the neighborhoods around here, or what's the plan to keep letting them know what's available?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. I will say that after we began, again, our intensive outreach this morning, had vans coming, and had multiple contacts with people, even as early as this afternoon, I'd say we had some folks that were maybe some of our tougher customers, if you will. And even as late or as early as early this afternoon, we were getting some of those folks into housing vouchers. Again, on a normal schedule, it can take 12 to 13 to 14 interactions with people to develop that trust and rapport to say, we're not going away, we're here with our partners. So there are people that may have not taken advantage of our new storage that we had. We had about 10 people take advantage of that. We've got more storage available, and we'll continue to get that message out there. But there will continue to be intensive outreach with our partners at Albuquerque Community Safety and our other outreach partners. So we will continue to reach out. We know a lot of the folks and try to get them connected.
In the survey that was given, were the tenants or the people that were specifically asked if they would go to the West Side shelter?
Yes.
If so, how many said yes and how many declined?
I love the question. We think it's 30, but I do want to say a couple things. Yes, we absolutely ask that. And sometimes we'd hear, I've been there, don't want to go. We also are hearing, yeah, I want to get there. So we're thinking about 30 said that. I do want to say there are beds there now. And our Albuquerque Opportunity Center also opened up some more beds, of which we got those people into those beds. So
30 said yes or no?
yes,
30 said yes.
yes.
Then do we know how many said no? Is that like out of the 110, then
Well,
80 said no?
I mean, I guess you could say that. We can get back to you, but that's a kind of a tricky piece because you may say no today, we're going to be out tomorrow, and you may say yes. It changes. I saw some of the same people that we saw last week, and there was a change, you know. But why is that? They're either seeing familiar faces. They're saying, you know, we got to keep people safe. So we can get those figures, and we're glad we did the survey. It helped really identify some of the pieces, getting people on our coordinated entry system for housing, but it changes.
Is there a concern at all with losing track of those people now that they're not in centralized locations?
Very good question. Because of our outreach with intensive outreach, ACS, again, we are beginning with our Deputy Holguin doing intensive case conferencing every Friday. The survey allowed us to have that information and to also find out where people are. So we are gathering with our partners. It's a proven model. We do it now with our wellness too. We've housed a lot of people that way to keep working it. Where is Bob? What does Bob need? Okay, he's close. We need a security deposit. So intensive case conferencing is a key piece of our plan. We've done it before, it works, and that's part of keeping track. You know, our rough part, I think we might have thought 40-ish people. It had definitely narrowed down. And just to build on what the mayor said, I think because of how much uptake there was today, people were getting that touch, they were getting connected. There was a lot of movement today that really helped make it possible for this.
Sasha, I think you had one.
Well, you know, for me, honoring the space, it makes sense for housing and public safety or some combination of that. But it's also going to depend on funding. And in other words, like, I'm not the full decider. So I like a combination of those two. But if all our funding is for one or the other, we'll go that direction.
Well, just given the successful arrest of the mayor who said was causing so many issues, did that arrest make closing it given that it gave them so much safer? Or was it because of the arrest? Or was it because of the closure of the arrest occurred? Or did you kind of talk to that?
Yeah, I'll kind of reiterate a little bit. The timing, you know, we always ask for time to conduct an investigation. We do that, you know, you hear us say that and it sounds like sort of a stock phrase or something like that. It's not. Like, literally it takes time for us to get the evidence we need, interview the people we need. So we were very sensitive to making sure that we could bring justice first. And so that was certainly a piece of it. Now, what we did learn as part of that is that a lot of this is widespread anyway. It just happened one individual used a gun and killed someone. But those activities were going on that involved dozens of people at this park. And so the activity itself was not correlated to one person in any way. That was just the person who pulled the trigger.
Julie and then Matt and then
Just a general
So with respect to that bill, we do, it also sounds like a stock phrase, but we do actually review it. We're reviewing it in particular with respect to some of the pending applications. So there are some legal questions that I want to get before I'll give a definitive answer. But I will say two things. Number one, we still believe in all the above approach. That doesn't even mean that we do it. It just means that we need the permission and the legal authority to do it. So this obviously would be a tool, and we want all the tools we can. The second thing is, it just does not help any governing body. I was in the legislature, I was the state auditor, to have any governing body change policies in a month or 2 months. And so whenever there is the kind of waffling that goes on in a legislative body, I'm inclined to not honor that. Instead, we have to give stuff a try, and if it doesn't work, then we'll stop doing it. But it doesn't work for the public or for legal or for individuals who need help or anyone for expectations for changing our mind all the time. And so those two things are certainly biasing me in one direction.
Okay, a couple more questions and then we're
Just over a month ago, you said closing Coronado Park was not an option. What changed between then and now? And then also, what would you say to those critics who say that the people who lived here were not consulted about that closure in their opinions?
Yeah. Thank you. Well, what I'd say for people that are not consulted, that's an inaccurate statement. People were consulted. We've talked to people here for the last month and before. Outreach has been a part of Coronado. It hasn't been as safe as it used to be. So people were aware. I can tell you, and just to build on that safe outdoor space, I can tell you the first person I talked to this morning, a gentleman I ran into over the street, talked to me. He says, here's what we have to do, and what he described was a safe outdoor space. I didn't ask him, but people are giving solutions. They've known that we need to close. We need to keep you safe. So I would say people were consulted. That's why we did the survey to say, what do you need? So I think that's a totally inaccurate statement.
So what I'll say to the other part of your question is that in the state of the city, I said we're reevaluating all our policies, and that's true. And people should take that seriously. There's a reason why that's in the state of the city. And so that includes everything else. And so I know for us, on that particular day, we did not think it would be appropriate for a number of reasons, including the investigation, including getting our own legal ducks in a row. And so while we want to be firm and give clear guidance, we're not going to do things knee-jerk. And so I'm not going to make a decision one day after a shooting based on that information when the issue is much more complex. So we're also not going to honor the complexity of these situations by saying that anything is definitive.
all right. Thank you very much for coming. Thanks.
Thanks. Oh, you guys are the bomb.
All right.
Hey, I don't think we've ever met. Matt.
We did once before.
Oh, okay. Yeah.